Why your brain deleted your first memories. Right now, there are thousands of moments from your life that you will never remember. Not because they weren't important, not because they never happened, but because your brain buried them. And according to some of the newest research, they may still be there, hidden, silent, waiting, which raises a strange question. If the first years of your life shaped who you became, and you can't remember any of them, then who exactly was living those years? Think about it. What's the earliest moment you can honestly remember? Maybe a birthday, maybe sitting in the backseat of a car, maybe a family vacation. For most people, the story starts around age 3. Everything before that feels like fog, and that's strange, because those missing years were anything but empty. In fact, between birth and age 3, you learned more than at any other time in your entire life. You learned language, you learned faces, you learned trust, you learned fear, you learned what comfort felt like, and somehow you forgot almost all of it. For over a century, scientists thought they knew why. Babies simply couldn't form memories. Case closed. Except they were wrong, completely wrong. In the 1980s, psychologist Carolyn Rovee-Collier performed an experiment that changed everything. She tied a ribbon from a baby's foot to a mobile hanging above the crib. At first, the babies kicked randomly, but eventually they discovered something. Their kicks made the mobile move. And once they understood the connection, they started kicking on purpose. Weeks later, the babies returned. And without being taught again, they immediately began kicking, which meant something astonishing. They remembered. Babies weren't blank slates. They were storing information, learning patterns, building memories, which created a much bigger mystery. If babies can remember, why can't adults remember being babies? Where did those memories go? Were they erased? Or are they still somewhere inside your brain right now? The answer gets even stranger, because your earliest memory might not even be real. A study involving thousands of people found that many participants described memories from periods of life when forming those memories was biologically impossible. Some claimed to remember being in a crib. Others remembered events from before their first birthday. But memories don't always work like recordings. They're stories, and stories can change. That picture you've seen 100 times, that funny family story everyone repeats, that memory your parents told you about. Eventually, your brain stitches the pieces together until you stop remembering the photograph and start remembering the memory, which raises an uncomfortable possibility. If some memories can be created, could forgotten memories still exist? Scientists spent decades searching for something called an engram, a physical trace left behind by a memory. For years, it sounded almost mythical, until technology finally caught up. Researchers discovered that memories are stored inside specific networks of neurons. And even when a memory seems forgotten, those networks often remain. The memory itself may survive, only access is lost. And that's a completely different idea, because forgetting might not mean deletion, it might mean disconnection. That theory became even more shocking when scientists studied infant memories. In one remarkable experiment, researchers tagged the exact neurons involved in a baby mouse's memory. Weeks later, the animal behaved as though the memory had disappeared. But when scientists reactivated those neurons with light, the forgotten memory suddenly returned. Not relearned, not rebuilt, reactivated, which sounds almost like science fiction. But it raises an incredible possibility. What if your first memories aren't gone either? What if you simply lost the key? Ironically, the answer may lie in the very thing that made your infant brain extraordinary: growth. When you're born, your brain is changing faster than it ever will again. New neurons are constantly being created. And while that makes babies incredible learners, it may also make memories unstable. Imagine trying to organize books inside a library while workers are rebuilding the shelves every day. Books get misplaced, not because they're destroyed, but because the entire system is still under construction. Researchers discovered something fascinating. When they slowed the growth of new neurons in baby mice, the animals remembered longer. And when they increased neuron growth in adults started forgetting like infants. Which means childhood amnesia might not be a flaw, it might be a trait. Nature chose adaptability over perfect memory, because survival matters more than nostalgia. And maybe that's a good thing, because perfect memory sounds wonderful, until you imagine remembering absolutely everything, every embarrassing moment, every painful experience, every meaningless Tuesday from 20 years ago. Forgetting isn't the opposite of intelligence. It may be one of the reasons intelligence exists at all, but perhaps the strangest discovery came from Yale. In 2025, researchers scanned the brains of awake infants, and they found something surprising. The hippocampus was active, even in very young babies, meaning memories were being encoded, the files were being written. So why can't adults access them? One theory suggests something almost poetic. Your younger brain used a different operating system. The information still exists, but the software changed, like finding old floppy disks with no computer capable of reading them. The files remain. The key is missing. And maybe that's why some forgotten experiences never disappear completely, because your body remembers. Long before you could remember stories, you could remember feelings: safety, stress, comfort, fear. These emotional memories live deep beneath conscious awareness, which means experiences you can never recall may still influence the way you love, the way you trust, the way you respond to danger. Sometimes people feel anxious without understanding why. Sometimes they struggle to explain why certain situations feel safe or unsafe. And perhaps the answer comes from somewhere much older, because implicit memories don't feel like memories. They feel like reality, which creates an incredible irony. The years you remember least may have shaped you the most. And maybe that's why childhood amnesia feels strangely unsettling, because deep down, we sense someone is missing. Someone who learned to walk, someone who heard music for the first time, someone who laughed before they knew language, someone who existed before they even understood they existed. And that person is both gone and still here. Because even if you can't remember the first time someone made you feel safe, that feeling may have shaped every relationship you've ever had. Even if you can't remember your first fears, your nervous system might. Even if you can't remember your first experience of love, some hidden part of you may have been carrying it your entire life. For more than 100 years, scientists believed forgetting meant destruction. Today, more and more evidence suggests something different. Maybe forgetting simply means losing access. Maybe the library is still full. Maybe the room is still locked. And perhaps somewhere inside your brain, the first time you heard your mother's voice still exists. The first time you felt comfort still exists. The first time you were frightened still exists. Silent, dormant, just beyond reach. And maybe one day, science will find the key. But perhaps the greatest mystery isn't why your brain deleted your first memories. Perhaps it's this: long before you knew your name, long before you recognized yourself, long before you had a story, there was still someone there, someone learning, someone feeling, someone becoming. And although you can never meet that person face to face, you have spent your entire life becoming them. Because long before you remembered being alive, you already were.